Debate start.
I hope everyone is back. Okay, before we start this round, I'd like to say a few things. First, congrats to both of the teams for making it to the Kansai 2021 Rookie Grand Finals. Secondly, remember to use gender-neutral terms. And if you want to declare your pronouns, please do so in the text. So with that being said, on the motion that this House regrets the prevalence of virtue signaling on social media, we'd like to start the Grand Final with the Prime Minister. Here.
Can you hear me? Thank you. And I have no gender pronouns. Okay. Thank you, cheers. What they really want in the area that they really want to need something, and what people who do the brochure signaling will try to donate is sometimes contradicting. Virtue signaling is the action of the exaggerating virtual activity, and they have strong incentives to pay attention to the people in the social media and got the influencing power in the social media. So they cannot understand what they really want in the developing countries or the place in the which happened the earthquake or some heavy rain. So we think this is disturbing the truly and virtual activity, and we think we are happy to propose this motion. So I'll talk about two things in my speech. The first three, we cannot deliver what they really want and who they really want. We will miss these kind of things in the opposition paradigm. And secondly, virtual signaling will lose the social discussion and the social important discussion about the actual place about this point. So we think, so I'll talk about that. Before moving on to my argument, let me make some models in this debate. So what is virtual signaling? We think four things in my speech. So first is that they don't cut down what they use just because they just want to get the social status easily. So they don't want to use so much time and so much money, and they don't think they want to they purely want to help someone or help people. And secondly, they don't care about how those money actually used. So it is just because they want to get the social status, so they don't care about these stuffs will actually used in the actual places or not. It's not affect their social status, so they don't report about that in the social media. And for three things, in order to get benefit of themselves, so they will donate the understandable things. For example, that and the future and for example, some money or some clothes or some stationery goods to the developing countries, like Cambodian people. But actually, Cambodian people don't really want to these stuffs, and this will exceed it. And these stuffs is already exceeded these developing countries, and they can so this will become a waste of the good. So these goods will become the waste in developing country, and we think will disturb the supporting actions. So and 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 in our part, we can suppose the world which media will report actually what is happening in this area and what kind of support you really want. We can so in this our country we can give them this social discussion or the social media, and we can report these kind of things. So moving on to my first argument. So we cannot deliver what they really want or who they really want in the opposition paradigm. So what is the incentives of the virtually to try to do virtual signaling people? They have strong incentives to exaggerate their virtual activity. So they try to do the understandable or easy to represent and easy to understand for the people who live in the same country. So for example, and they have and also they have try to want just meet the social requirement. So they have so but these stuffs and these donations is sometimes meaningless because demand and supply is not tied up in this context. For for example, in the past, Japan gave a big donation to the country which happened, which is which is um which is confused and which is got damaged in the Vietnam War. But some people, but actually they don't want to want the donation, but they really want to the human resources and they want to the physically physically support. They actually want that kind of thing. So these kind of donation will not be actual support for these people in the actual places. So and also some the people who want to get the social status and do the virtual signaling people will not do these kind of things because they don't purely want to help these people, and so they will don't use their precious time or precious money to these people. So moving on to my second argument. So virtual signaling will lose the social important discussion about the actual places. So for example, we think this virtual signaling will mainly happen in the people in the developed country try to aid the developing country or the area which is really needed for them, and or some places got the earthquakes or heavy rain. For these people, what they really want is not apply to what they try to. So social media will report about they can make a donation and go to bank, and also they can the process of the sending over clothes or stationary goods to the developing country. So these people only report themselves in order to get the social status on, for example, on YouTube or on the Twitter. So they don't report to actual places. So that is to say, we cannot understand whether these kind of stuffs will actually use in the actual places or not. So they can only think they can donate to the developing country or the place which is got injured. And but actually, these kind of support will help so helpful for these actual places or not is very ambiguous, and also this actual activity will glorify in the social media, and other people try to do the same things, and this will disturb the actual support for the developing country and these and actual places. So we think this is very harmful for the actual places to recover from the normal life. So we think this is very so in our part, we can support these actual places, and we think we are happy to propose this motion.
Thank you, Speaker, for that fine speech. Next, we'd like to invite Leader of the Opposition. Here.
NGO. Am I audible? Okay. My time begins now. Two issues. Firstly, why signaling contributes to the spread of the movement. Secondly, why even if these celebrities have an evil intention, their action itself will be a pure virtue. But before that, one clarification toward the proposition. We think they could not give any active harm to support this motion, because even if we take the best, like worst case of the proposition, we think at worst that's meaningless. even if human resources are needed, we think money is at least better than nothing. As long as we can accumulate more amount of donation, we think that can be used for anything as we like. Therefore, they have to show why this is more rather counterproductive, why those donations, why such kind of like a little unnecessary donation would rather harm. We think their speech did not give enough justification to regret the motion itself. Okay, moving on to our argument. We say like the signaling uniquely contributes to the spread of the movement. Because firstly, I'd like to analyze who are going to start the movement. We think that these kind of signalings by celebrities can successfully like support the existence of movement to start, to spread, to make this movement effective. Because the people starting these movements are usually socially vulnerable, discriminated minorities who are ignored from the society. They feel underrepresented, they feel lonely. Even if these people solely start the movement, in many cases they are oppressed by surroundings, they feel no support or exist, because they are usually vulnerable in their environment. However, due to the existence of signaling by celebrity, for example, by a fashion model like doing an ice bucket challenge, by like Osaka Naomi wearing a black mask, we think this is a kind of like virtual signaling. We think these vulnerable people can feel that they are supporters, the majority of the world are in fact supporting them. We think this fact itself can give a really strong motivation to people to start up, to voice up, even if they are in the like oppressed situation in their surroundings. Therefore, we think getting a support by like celebrities itself can be a legitimacy to start up that movement. But secondly, I'd like to explain this kind of like signaling even contributes to spread and to make this movement effective. Why? Because we think these signalings have a really strong intention to be spread through social medias, as proposition explained. As it's written on info slide, we think these people are making signaling on the sole intent of virtue, which means we think most of the people who do this are the people who are already privileged in the society, who are celebrities, actors, fashion models, or some kind of politicians. As a result, we think these kind of like virtue signalings tend to be something really unique, really something interesting and surprising, and these people have a motivation to spread it all over society. As a result, we think this kind of signaling can be much more effective to spread all over society rather than the like posting by these activists themselves. This affects two actors positively. Firstly, it's about general public, because we think supporting some alien or unfamiliar movement requires quite a lot of courage. It's quite hard for Japanese people to understand the feeling of Black Americans. It's quite hard for us to understand what like Chinese poor kids are feeling. So we think like general public have almost no incentive to suddenly start supporting this kind of minority movements. However, we think by seeing the celebrity actively supporting this kind of movement in the form of like social medias, they can feel like this supporting them is something normal. These things are virtue, so they can follow these people. As a result, we think rather than like considering the fact that these activists themselves in a vulnerable position cannot voice out, we think this celebrity has a really strong impact to influence the existence of the movement, the legitimacy of the movement to general public. Even if these kind of people do not correctly understand everything, even if these people do not have a like genuinely pure motivation to support these people, at least they have a power to spread the existence of the problem, spread the existence of the movement. And we think if the movement are not acknowledged by the number of people, it's ineffective. We think the number is a really important factor in the movement. Second is about authority. We think in order for movement to succeed, we have to involve the authority, because vulnerable like oftentimes have no power to change the society, social structures, so they have to affect the authority. In most cases, these kind of privileged celebrities who are usually making this kind of like virtual signalings have a strong connection with media, with politicians. As a result, we think if these people voice out, they have an intention to spread their activity, or like these kind of people who are in privileged positions who do not even notice the existence of problems can look at the posting of these celebrities and they can be aware of the problems. As a result, the connection between like authority and like vulnerable can be made thanks to these celebrities, which is already like originally never to be made. As a result, in conclusion, we think in order for movement to succeed, they required more people to know the existence, number of supporters, especially by privileged authorities. We think these kind of goal of like movement had been achieved only thanks to the existence of this kind of virtual signaling by the like celebrities. And that's why we think these movements significantly contributed to the spread of a lot of minority movement happening in the modern society. Secondly, I'd like to explain why even if these celebrities have an evil intention, their action itself would lead to something correct and purely barter, which directly clashes to the proposition's fourth argument. Why? They said the intention of celebrity is to be famous, to be like noticed by a lot of people. We think this intention itself makes their action really correct because the general public and general society, especially a lot of magazines or news reporters, have strong incentive to criticize celebrities. We see a lot of like Shukan Bunshin showing and reporting the mistakes these celebrities make. If they really want to be famous in the correct way, we think they have an incentive to do something which is not wrong. Because if they do so-called like meaningless support, they will soon be criticized through the internet, through social media, through TV shows. As a result, we think these celebrities rather have strong incentive to study about these movements or counsel to like professionals, and what they do would be rather correct and really corresponding to the existence of the problems. We think even if like we don't think if these people unnecessarily give stationeries to the Cambodian schools, although it's unnecessary, we think they will be strictly criticized, which rather like makes their like image worse. And we think they have incentive to avoid these things. Therefore, we think if we follow the incentive from the proposition, they would rather improve their activities. But even if these people do something wrong, at least because the society have an incentive to criticize these kind of like celebrities, we think we can see TV shows saying that this action is wrong and you public should do something which is not like this or should do something correct. Therefore, even if the celebrity do something wrong, at least they have an impact to influence the existence of these movements to the society. And we think general public can notice that that's the wrong thing, and we think they can be affected in a correct way. That's why we oppose this motion.
Thank you, Speaker, for your remarks. Next, we'd like to invite Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
Am I audible? Thanks. Okay. The speech will start. Honorable Speaker, detrimental motivation to helping the people, like it's able to gaining the social status in the society, that motivation never leads to the significant benefit for people. That leads to the harm to the in the developing countries, just giving the stuff for them. Therefore, this motion simply because those detrimental motivation never leads to the good outcome for the developing countries or the person who are suffering right now, we should oppose. Moreover, ladies and gentlemen, the person who really need the help, those people's voice never be reflected and that are crowded out under their side of the house. That is the reason why we are very happy to oppose in the motion. I'm going to talk about three things here. First of all, I'm going to talk about why the detrimental motivation and giving the stuff to the developing countries or giving the stuff the unnecessary things is simply harmful to the people. I'm going to talk about the incentive of the people, usual person or the YouTuber, like they're paying the attention. Secondly, I'm going to talk about why the voice of the people who really need the help are going to be crowded out under their side of the house. And thirdly, I'm going to talk about what kind of the AP we are assuming for, why our side of the house, the people's motivation trying to help the people are going to be incentivized. All liberal directly crosses the prime leader of opposition. So first of all, why our side of the house, the individual citizens never research about the help. So what is the activity we are assuming for? We are assuming for the person who are motivated to helping the people just because that is easier for you to apply for the job, for instance. Because if you do the activities to given the unnecessary cost to the developing countries, that is sometimes effectively work when you apply for the job, because that is social, that will be the social status on the other side of the house. We are going to we are not going to support those activity and detrimental motivation of the people. Why this is significantly harmful? Three mechanisms here. First of all, the usual person like tries to gain the social status, never research or do not try to reduce the cost they want to for. For instance, just because they do not want to help the people and just they want to gain the social status, many that they try to cut down the cost they have to for. They are cut down the time they are going to research, and they do not much care about what kind of the usage of that money or that food. The specific example here is the unnecessary cost given and donation. 20 years ago, the developing countries need the clothes and stationery from the developed countries. Therefore, those activities were widespread on the SNS or the media. However, under the status quo right now, those activity is detrimentally harming to the developing countries because they are surrounded the unnecessary clothes from the developed countries. Simply that leads to environmental problem or the unnecessary harsh situation under the status quo. We think that is coming from the detrimental incentive that people just want to gain the social status under the status quo. Second of all, therefore, those people who just want to gain the social status do not research and care about the outcome of their action, and uh, structurally because those social status is just initially checked by the activities purposes. For instance, when you apply for the job, whether that outcome of giving the stuff to the developing countries is not checked, just that action you did and that initial action was going to be checked when you are going to apply for the job. We think that is detrimental. The impact here is given the unnecessary stuff is simply harmful to the developing countries people, like the already unnecessary clause. That situation is actually harmful, and moreover, what they really need are not able to be reflected. Maybe what they really need is the food, but the unnecessary growth are going to come from the developed countries. Simply that is detrimentally harmful to the individual. Before moving on to the second, I will take your point.
Taken.
This isn't a debate about activity itself, but it's about signaling mainly made by celebrities who have effective, like appealing part to the society. We think you missed the context in this debate.
Also, the celebrities like they are going to given the money to those developing countries also detrimental. I'm going to talk about that is the second argumentation. Why the people who really need a voice are going to be crowded out under your side of the house. First of all, as I already told you, media and SNS have a clear incentive to spread the information about the intuitively understandable. For instance, the YouTuber and the celebrities, they giving the money to the developing countries who are starving, and those intuitive action are going to be catered under their side of the house. Moreover, the person who does not really want to help are going to go to those actions that intuitively get paying attention. Like I'm assuming the cases like the discussion. Discussion is not intuitively understandable and difficult to gain the social status. However, just given the money is easier for you to gain the social status under your side of the house. We think it's wrong because we think it's wrong because other discussion or discussion about feminism maybe those discussions are significantly important, but those actions never be happen under your side of the house. Why this is significantly harmful? First of all, even if the person who really need help tries to voice out, those voices never be those voices are going to be crowded out under your side of the house. Why is that? Because the discussion about feminism is not effective to gain the social status. They hesitate to do those actions. Rather, they try to doing the donation to the people because that is easier for you to gain the social status. those prioritization are going to be happen on the other side of the house. We think it's simply wrong because the who really need the help, who really need the food, or who really need the discussion are going to be crowded out because of the media attention and people attention. Thirdly, I'm going to talk about why our side of the house we are able to achieve in the better society. First of all, we are going to feel sympathy if the people really need the help. Therefore, our side of the house, who really want to help the people are going to do the action like the donation. What is the difference here? The difference here is those persons are going to research and consider about the outcome, how those money are going to be used, or how those clothes and stationery are going to be used in the developing countries. Those discussions never be happen in the case of the person. Just they want to gain the social status under their side of the house. That discussion or that incentive tries to helping the people is uniquely important that directly leads the outcome. Very happy to propose.
Thank you for the fine speech. Next, we'd like to move on to Deputy Leader of the Opposition. Here. DLO, are you there?
Sorry.
Okay, good.
Yes, I'll start. Okay. Am I audible right now? Okay. Okay. Okay, I'll start in 3, 2, 1. We think that we have to focus on the people who try to appeal on social media and think about what they would do to maximize the image of themselves. And we think that the context that proposition is talking about, like just giving money or like just donating things without thinking much, we think that is not the best to appeal on SNS. And we think that the context that we will be talking about is much more likely to happen and leads to raising awareness of these vulnerable people in trouble and lead to more social movements. So in my speech, I'll be talking about mainly 2 things. First of all, I'll be talking about how even if these people are just initially, for example, just considering to pay money, for example, or they're just doing it for self-interest or to make them look good, we think that it's going to become their real intention to help those people. And I'd like to explain the mechanism of that. And secondly, I'd like to compare will the awareness of these invisible movements really spread on our side of the house. And comparatively, I'll explain why it's going to be better on our side of the house. So moving on to my first point. So at first, obviously, these people might not have this idea of might just be doing it to make themselves look like a good person. However, we think that first of all, these people will actually take actions to help these people, and will not just be giving random things or just paying money for as Team Proposition has told us consistently. We think that this is not true because we think that actual action looks much more appealing and makes them look like a better person, especially on SNS. Why do we think so? 2 reasons. A, people know that the viewers of SNS know that actions take much more time than just paying money. So we think that the viewers, it's clear to the viewers that taking action is better. So we think that the influencer does have the incentive to take action. And secondly, we think that using actual photos, for example, this celebrity taking photos with people in Africa, for example. We think that these kind of things are more attractive and makes them look like more like a better person. Like, for example, like a celebrity can go to a poor country and like maybe create a school or like help them make food for them and those kind of things, and like taking photos of these things and like showing that these poor people are helped by you. We think that these photos are really appealing to the public compared to like just saying that I paid $1 billion. So, and even if secondly, we think even if they do just even if like they don't feel that they aren't actually supporting that movement, or like it's just for themselves, we think that the actions itself will actually help those vulnerable people. And also we think that it will lead to having the victims' voices heard. Two reasons here. For A, we think that even if it's just actions that makes you feel good, or actions just paying money, we think that even if you're just paying money for that, it's a large part of property, and we think that people usually consider what will be the best way to use that. And B, we think that when they choose where to donate and those kind of things, we have to consider who really needs it, or so we think that at least to some extent these celebrities learn about these vulnerable people. And so we think that even if these people just pay money, it's not it's at least better on our side of the house. And even more, we think that these people are more likely to take the actions, and we think that the actions taking actions and going to that people, the vulnerable people, we think that they'll have actual experience and time with them that will help them better understand the problem. So we think that this social movement will succeed. So let me move on to my comparatives. On which side will the awareness of invisible movements and the people in need will be spread? So first of all, let me compare. We think that on government's paradigm, people will have no chance to know the movement in the first place. So let me focus on two actors. First of all, the people who do the virtue signaling. So we think that when they look for what to appeal, they will look for movements, and we think that they'll look for, especially to minor ones that the public does not initially have any attention to. Why do we think so? First of all, they want to gather attention, and we think that something people did not know already, these kind of things are more likely to get the attention from the public. For example, when you see the Black Lives Movement over and over again on SNS, you're probably not likely to pay attention on each one of those posts that you see. However, when you see this problem you never knew already, you're more likely to focus on that and pay attention to that. And secondly, you can easily depict how serious that problem is, and by depicting this problem as really serious, or more serious than it actually is, you can make yourself look even better. And we think that that is easier for minor problems that people didn't initially know. So we think that this is only possible on our side of the house. So the second actor we're going to be talking about is the people who sees these the influencers doing this virtue signaling. So we think that these people's awareness will increase, and we think that this is really necessary in order to spread the movements of considering the ones that didn't have any attention before. Why do we think so? So first of all, we think that simply the number of people who pays attention will increase, and this is really important. We think that the celebrities, or the people who do these kinds of virtue signaling, have many followers on SNS, like Instagram or Facebook and those kind of things, and as a result, simply the number is really big. And secondly, looking at who these followers and the people who increase are, these are the people who would otherwise had no attention to these movements, and we're only interested in movies or maybe those kind of things, and we're not really engaged in social movements and those kind of things. So we think that these people uniquely know these kind of problems through our side of the house. So for these reasons, we are proud to oppose.
Thank you for that speech. Next, we'd like to move on to government whip. Here.
Can you hear me? Okay. 見てませんでした。ごめんなさい。So, please wait a minute. So my speech starts 3, 2, 1. In this speech, I want to prove that white Indians as a paradigm in the movement is counterproductive, given that this motion is actually the social media, and whiteness as a paradigm, the power and checking balance is well established, and why the efficiently the donation will be happen. So I will do the 3 things in my speech. Number 1, Indians as a paradigm, the dominant movement is counterproductive for the vulnerable. And second, why in the long term, the power balance will be well established, and the people will get more donation at all inside the paradigm. And thirdly, which is more important, the people who don't, which actually is more important. First, what kinds of movement, why India as a paradigm movement is counterproductive. The 3 analyses here. Number 1, the dominant and prevalent movement is the dominant and useful one, and which is not so, which is easy for the general public to donate. So 2 analyses here. Number 1, so what we need the prime minister leader opportunity to explain that the move in order for the movement to start up and prevail, they need that such kind of celebrity. It is not true in the history, right? Like that the standard of the feminism will stand out the woman, and standard of the black will stand by the King, and startup of the independent will stand up by the Nehru and Gandhi. Ladies and gentlemen, what is a new movement and really necessary movement for the vulnerable is stand out by the vulnerable people itself. Why? Because in the first place, the celebrity will suffer and fear the backlash from the society in the first place, right? So that when they push the new matter or new concept, they are more likely to get the backlash from the public, and they will lose the popularity in the first place. So that is why they have to follow the dominant narrative and useful narrative. So that is why in the Europe, the celebrity will follow that depriving the Islamic woman of the veil, because this is a very dominant narrative for the Europe. And secondly, what is more, in the first place, such kinds of people will prevail the movement, which is easier for each individual to make action. They say that they make action, but it is very hard for them, for the general public, right? So in order to get the popularity for the general public, they have to say that it is enough, ladies and gentlemen, that just putting the money towards the people, or just putting unnecessary costs towards the people. So by doing so, they can get the popularity, and this is really counterproductive. And secondly, what is more, they say that the checking balance will happen. But what vulnerable cannot voice out in such kind of situation? Because social media will also lie such kind of celebrity in the first place. And they say that that is why if the people, vulnerable people, will say that no, the growth is unnecessary. Well, no, money is unnecessary. The people, or general public, will say that they are the taker. The taker will betray the celebrity who is very, very important existence. The taker is very selfish. That is why in the disaster place, the people, vulnerable people, have to pay a lot of costs towards the costs, unnecessary costs, which is given by the general public. And what is more, and what was in the ideological theory, the disabled people will suffer from the superficial kindness and killing their respect. And so that is why in the first place, by such kind of celebrity or SNS will prevail such kind of the useful but unnecessary movement, and they say that it is enough for the vulnerable people. By doing so, they cannot get the what they really want, and they get what they don't want, and they pay the cost is actually. And secondly, and thirdly, what is more, the people who really want to help will be crowded out in the first place, right? For example, why? Because the 2 analyses here. Number 1, in the first place, the people who really want to help is not popular in the society. For example, in the Bangladesh, there's a lot of the disaster, and people are starved to death, but because of a lot of disaster, but no one know in Japan in the first place. Why? Because what's really vulnerable people don't have any social capital in the first place, don't have any don't have any money to pay the social media to prepare the information like that, right? So that is why compared to the Bangladesh really severely disaster, the Americans disaster, which is temporary and not so serious, will be well prevailed, and a lot of money go to the American. So that is the crowd out situation will happen. What I want to say, their paradigm, the counterproductive. So secondly, why in such a paradigm, the situation will be much better. Ladies and gentlemen, in the first place, the people has the incentive to help itself, right? When we help the others, we can feel the happiness. So why such the general public is deceived in the today's status quo? Because the media will say that's low information. So at once the media will say that that's kind of the real information that actually the Bangladesh situation was very serious, or actually the giving the unnecessary costs is not so beneficial. Actually, what they need is the money, or such kinds of information at once media will prevail. So the people have the incentive to follow that kind of the things, right? So that is why, as the DPM said, like that the professional will do that. At once the media will also like the people who research well and pay a lot of cost and actually help the others. And don't say anything about the such kinds of virtue signaling. The people have the really still incentive to help the others in the first place. Ladies and gentlemen, their actor, like that's a prevailed NGO or very popular NGO, is well known by the general public in the first place, right? For example, America's disaster, or NGO who gives a close towards the poverty. Such kind of is still well known, right? So that it is unnecessary actually for the media to prevail such kinds of information. So as the uniqueness of the media have to be against as a dominant narrative, like that such kinds of very useful and very easier for the general public to follow. And by doing so, you can get at least some follower, which actually help the people. So thirdly, so which one is more important in the first place? So even if in their best case, that's they can give a lot of kind of the donation towards the poverty people. But as I said, such poverty people is popular poverty people, and non-popular poverty people will be left in their paradigm and can be sold in their paradigm. So which is more important? We have the three criteria that our paradigm is more important. Number one, exclusivity. This is essentially, as I said, even if the media don't do anything, the people still have the incentive to pay a lot of taxes or a lot of money towards the popular property because they know that. But unpopular property, they cannot get any kind of the things. So that is as the exclusivity, as the media, we believe that we have to give a lot of money towards them. And secondly, the mechanism. They actually didn't explain that to why their vulnerable people cannot get any kind of help in us as a part, right? So that is we will well establish a mechanism that why the difference of that why such kinds of vulnerable people can get cannot get what they really want to what they want in the first place. So that our mechanism is well established. And thirdly, the seriousness. Ladies and gentlemen, the Bangladesh the suffering from the disaster is more serious situation in the first place. So that is why even in the best case, our actor should be more prioritized. The media or celebrity don't give the false information. Proud to propose.
Thank you, speaker, for your fine speech. Next, we would invite opposition whip. Here.
Not receive any kind of background from the Bunshin or any other kind of those who are against this kind of policy.
Thank you, speaker, for that speech. Next, we'd like to invite leader of the opposition's reply speech to conclude the opposites cases. Here.
Okay, am I audible? はい。Okay, 始めます。Okay, my time begins now. 2 points. First about intention of people's posting, another about practical consequence on people in need. First about intention. Governmental scenario was that people have incorrect and evil intention, so they post only like famous actions or like superficial support, which are effective. But first, we have to consider that this debate is not about intention, not about action itself. We are talking about the signaling on the social medias. And we think that even if what we have to focus on is whether the signaling action itself is correct. And we think we heard almost no response from the proposition about this point. This debate is not whether donation is good, but whether that posting of the donation to appeal the virtue itself is good or not. And we are saying that these kind of posts made as a celebrity itself is really good. So the consensus of the intention about these people with that, these people are posting in order to get good reputation. Social media, so therefore, we say that based on this intention, these kind of social media's posts itself tend to be something correct and based on true virtue. Why? Because firstly, we say they want to stand out, they want to be focused by the vast majority of the society. Therefore, they tend to be really careful not to be criticized, not to be backlashed. Especially when people have strong effectiveness in the society, they tend to so society have a strong incentive to find somewhere to criticize that person. Therefore, the more famous the person becomes, within the more the person will be really careful and do something which is really correct and really effective. Even if it's not, at least through their activity, they can be aware of the problems. They can be a little more knowledgeable what action itself is really correct. Therefore, the harm given from proposition was only something really quite short-termist. Even if their action itself is wrong, at least this posting itself can create a social debate. And we think due to the criticism, due to TV, wide shows or anything, what general citizen would perceive itself would be something correct. Therefore, even if intention, even if the action itself is incorrect and evil, we think this post on the social medias, this signaling itself has a really positive effect to the entire society. Second, about practical consequence. Governments say only unnecessary support, like clothing, like money, which is totally unnecessary, would be delivered. But they could not show why on their side of the house the situation would be better. We are saying that the number of people who really have a motivation to research, find, and support vulnerable themselves are so small. Therefore, we think on the proposition side, the number of people who know the existence of the problems, the number of people who have a motivation to support them would be absolutely less on their side of the house. Which means even if the quality might be better on their side, we think the number of people who are aware of the problem itself would be much less. Therefore, we think the situation would be much worse on their side of the house. In order to stay vulnerable, we think they have to have appealing power. They have to persuade massive citizens. They have to perceive authorities who have a power to influence the society. And we think they could provide no alternative. Especially people who are really in need, are so in vulnerable situation or press situation, who have no power to voice out, who have no power to affect the society. And we think these people can be focused, these people can be noticed only thanks to the intention of the celebrities who use these vulnerable people to appeal themselves. And we think these people have an incentive to do something correct. These people have an incentive to do something unique, quite different from others. Therefore, we think even if we take the best case from the proposition side, at least that would be useless. They could not show any positive reason to regret the motion itself. Therefore, we think for all of these reasons, even if we take what's the government's even if we take all the scenario coming from proposition, we think at least this can never be the active reason to regret the existence of the motion. Therefore, we think we mentioned that this debate is not only about action, but I think the only opposition side was the side talking specifically about the posting, about signaling, and we say that these things had been necessary to give a power to these vulnerable, and that's why we oppose.
Thank you, Speaker. Next, we invite the Prime Minister's reply speech to conclude the whole debate. Here.
Thank you, Chairs. Two failures in the opposition parliament. First is the vulnerable actor who still don't have recognized from the majority of people will not be saved in the opposition parliament. And secondly, unnecessary health will be promoted by the celebrity, and the unnecessary movement will be promoted, and this will disturb the actual health in the opposition parliament. So we think we take this debate. So I'll talk about two things in my speech. Firstly, about the vulnerable people, and secondly, this is counterproductive for people. So firstly, the opposition will talk about the vulnerable people will have not influential power without virtual signaling. But we think this is totally wrong, because people who have two responses here. Firstly, about the case of the old economy which is option we talk about is totally irrelevant to this motion. But simply because she voiced out the Black people just because of social justice, not have evil intention of it. So we think this is not the case of the virtual signaling in the first place. And secondly, people who have evil attention try to try to have social status. Don't try to take a note about the controversial issue like black people's problem, because simply because they don't want to be criticized by these people, criticized by the majority of people. They just simply they try to get the social status. They don't take a note. They don't active. They don't do the movement about the controversial issues. So today's opposition case is that this will contribute to the spreading of movement, and because celebrity can do the virtual signaling and spread the idea of it, and we think we already clearly show you this is counterproductive, and simply because these people will report mainly what they really want. What they really want to try to do. For example, go to bank and showing the certificate of the donation. So situation which they pack up unnecessary stuff to developing countries. So deputy leader opposition told us these people will go actual places and support them because this is more likely to attentive in social media. But we think this is super minor cases because these people who have evil attention don't purely want to help these people, just want to get social status. For these people, this going actual places and report that situation is too bother for them to take, and also this is too waste of money or too waste of the precious time. So these people focus on the cost of performance and they try to superficial support that may unnecessary for the actual places. At least in that paradigm, we don't deliver the unnecessary stuff by social discussion and unnecessary stuff to the actual people by the correct social discussion that uniquely happen in the government parliament. And secondly, more vulnerable people will be saved comparatively and not simply because these people the people who now don't recognize the majority people have more likely to pay attention by the social media, and we think this is very so we think we can in our paradigm this is more likely to be saved in the actual places of people, and also we don't disturb the help which is most helpful for these people. So we think we'll take this debate. We are happy to propose this motion.
Reflection.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes the rookie grand final. You can go back to the auditorium. The results will be announced later on. I say, the judges, please come to the judge room, and thanks to everyone else.